Sorry, I didn't mean to be so crude.
This isn't live, is it?
No. Oh my God, can you imagine? No.
No.
No way. No. Hello, and welcome to the Katie Halper Show. On this episode, we are talking to Sam Kriss. Please make sure that you go to our Patreon. That's patreon.com/the Katie Halper Show. And donate. You'll get some great bonus content, some Matt Karp coming down the pike, and send interviews, and you'll be able to hear the rest of our interview with Sam Kriss. Make sure you come to our show on June 14th. To get tickets to that, you just go to Give to WBAI. That's Give to WBAI. Then put in the search bar Katie, the word Katie, that's my name, and Marie, Marie, and a story time with Katie and Marie will come up. Not a very good description of the event, but donate $10. It's nothing. $10 to WBI, and then you'll get to come to the show, hear me and Gabe talk to Freddie DeBoer and Angela Nagel. Hello, and welcome to the Katie Halper Show. I'm your host, Katie Halper, and I'm joined by, as always,
Gabe Pacheco.
Hello, Gabe. How are you?
Katie, I'm just trying to live my best life, but it's so hard. It's so difficult. I'm addicted to technology.
Are you?
Yeah, and I got my phone. I keep my phone in my hand. I've got like iPhone claw.
Oh, is that a thing, or you just make that up?
I feel like it's definitely a thing. I just, my forearm is tightening up, and I just keep uploading, downloading new apps. And I downloaded this app recently from a game I used to play when I was in middle school. Not often, but I played it a couple times. I played this game, SimCity, and I saw that they had like a free version you could upload on your phone. And I built my own city. I was doing great. But then I forgot, I misallocated resources, and I didn't build enough fire stations. And, I wasn't going to build police stations because Black Lives Matter.
Mm-hmm. And all lives, but
all lives. But it was one opportunity where I felt like a micro tyrant. I had 60,000 souls in my city, and I felt like a little Robert Moses planning my own city. And but I didn't build enough fire stations, so fires all over in the outer boroughs of my city, and it felt like I was building the Bronx in the 70s.
So how does this compare to the game of Monopoly?
How does this compare? Well, Monopoly is amazing because you know exactly what you're doing. You're building a monopoly. So you're actually teaching people how to create a capitalist cartel and control all the means of production. Whereas with not in a Marxist way, but sort of when one guy controls all the means of production. But
Monopoly.
With SimCity, it sounds like a positive game because it doesn't take into account corruption. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you're really dealing with real estate, my updated version of SimCity would have your real estate market collapse based on derivative swapping on Wall Street. And there'd also be redlining happening where there'd be neighborhoods where you just couldn't get funding.
Right.
Right.
So not enough realistic, what's the word? Not enough white flight, segregation. What else is there? Neglect.
Right. There's no opportunities for vigilantes to run around the neighborhood, sort of guardian angels. Zulu Nation ambassadors brokering peace deals between rival gangs.
You should report bugs. Maybe they can have a 1.0, 2.0, and we got rid of the bugs. Now there's corruption. Zulu Nation brokering.
Well, all that good stuff. I've been watching documentaries about the 70s in New York and Robert Moses' impact on the city. So I definitely feel like.
Tell me about him. I'm kind of ignorant. I don't know as much about him as I should.
There's a great book on him, The Power Broker, that everybody's read.
That, yeah.
And the same historian who wrote that is writing big books on President Johnson. But some people love Robert Moses, and a lot of people don't. He's like the reason that we have the Verrazano Bridge and other great works in the cities, but he is the reason that just big highways were built right through neighborhoods in the Bronx. Yeah,
as opposed to around them or something.
Right. His urban planning didn't take into account
the urban population.
the urban population. In quotes, I guess. So look up Robert Moses, Katie.
Will. I mean, I know all about him, but not as much as most people do. I know that book. I didn't read it. It's good though. It's a good book.
Oh my gosh, it's long.
Long.
It's
okay.
a lot going on. You get to
Long
really
life,
see how
right?
he was a megalomaniac. Yeah, he was running things for at least 40 years in the city, and you see how he set up his own sort of private fiefdom that was outside of the control and regulation of our presidents and much of New York State.
Nice. Well, what does Sim stand for? Like Carlos Sim?
Like Sims.
the Mexican magnet?
That's another sim game they could have. A
Yeah.
Carlos sim game where you simulate starting your own cartel.
Oh, is that where it comes from? Sim? Is that where it is? Simulate?
Like simulate. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Mhm.
And then Sin City is a movie, right?
Oh, yeah.
You probably love that one.
A little hard-boiled black and white
Yeah.
ditty. That movie's pretty good, based on Frank Miller's books, graphic novels.
Nice. By the way, you can hear the Katie Halper Show every Wednesday at 7 p.m. on WBAI. And by the way, make sure you rate and review us on iTunes.
Oh, please do that.
Please
we
do
love
that.
we love reviews.
We love it. We got good reviews. We got good stars.
You know what? I'll give you guys shout outs and extra credit for any colorful language you use.
Yes.
We want hyperbole. I love alliteration. Big fan of it. So write us a sonnet.
Yeah.
How about a review in haiku?
How about a sonnet, a succulent sonnet that suggests... God, I have not had enough coffee today. Usually I'm good with those alliterations.
A sensible sonnet?
Yeah, sensible sonnet. I'm usually alliteration able.
We're sonically sweet over here at the Katie Halper Show.
Sonic the Hedgehog is cute.
Yeah, that's
right?
a game.
That's a
video
game,
game.
you see? I play Pentix, by the way.
I don't know what that is.
It's like Tetris.
Oh my gosh.
It's really fun. It's really addictive. I went to a wedding this weekend. One of my best friends got married, Amelia and Mark. And
where'd you go for the wedding, by the way?
North Carolina.
Okay.
So I flew into Raleigh. It was in Hillsborough, I think. And she's a public health PhD there. And he moved to be with her there. And then they're moving to D.C., which is sad because I'd like them to come to New York. But on my flight back from there, I was really tired. And so instead of doing work, I just played, it's only like an hour and a half. I played Pentix the entire time.
Yeah, it's soothing. Sometimes you just need to take a vacation.
Is that good for your brain? I'd be so happy if it turned out it was good for your brain.
Yeah.
It is, right?
Well, there are all these games you can buy online. I don't know. It sounds like quackery.
I know.
These
Major
apps.
Quackery, yeah. We got to have a quack sound effect.
Get your brain right.
Right.
Brain
right. It was a great wedding. It was very low key. It was like beautiful and low key. That's so nice when it's beautiful and low key is so much better than what's the opposite of low key? Intense, high strung. Major key and failed, or even major key and successful. It feels like, you know what it feels like some weddings? I hate king size beds. And it feels like a king size bed sometimes. Like it's big and it's ugly. I don't think I'd ever want a king size bed. If I had a mansion, I'd want queens.
2 queens with some space in between, and then you can hop from queen to queen.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's my favorite part about going to a hotel is when they've got 2 beds in the room and I can just jump from one bed to the next.
Do you really do that?
Every time.
As a little kid, did you do that?
I regress. I go right back to it.
Did you, as a little kid, flip over your pillow?
I used to play Lava Monster.
What's that?
As a little kid. I had a brother and sister, and they're a little bit younger than me, and we would, that means that you would hop from one item of furniture to the next. Ooh. And so each item of furniture was an island, and the floor was the lava.
Right.
So you didn't want to ever touch the floor. If you did, boom, you were in the lava.
Right. Was that fun?
So fun. It's like King of the Hill, but with more jumping.
Great show.
People love it.
Yeah.
I like Rick and Morty. I'm a big Rick and Morty fan. If we're going to talk cartoons.
I never like cartoons, right? Never.
You've never will?
No, I watched Fairy Tale Theater when I was a kid.
Real? That's your parents. Your parents?
No, I didn't.
Did they make you
them.
watch like PBS shows?
They made me watch The Diary of Miss Jane Pittman, which was very disturbing. It was about a slave. But it was Disney, so it was kind of for kids. That would have been weird, a cartoon. Nowadays, they do like very grave subject matter cartoons, but not then. No, I never liked cartoons. I think I felt like talked down to by them. It wasn't even an intellectual thing. I just couldn't suspend my disbelief. That's
interesting. I felt talked down to by any movie where the child was the protagonist because I never want to watch precocious kids.
Right.
Large and in charge.
So you like A Christmas Story because he's the protagonist, but he's not a hero?
That's right.
You like him being denied agency.
Exactly. Just like real children.
Right, just like you were.
I hate any Macaulay Culkin movie. Boo.
Right.
Boo. Him Home Alone. Not Don't believe it. Goonies didn't like Goonies.
Oh,
Why?
really?
Because the little kid's making a
Right.
He
Booby
opens
trap.
up his booby traps and stuff. I'm like, I'm not making booby traps. Get out of here with that nonsense.
I like that. He had asthma. One of the kids had asthma. I had asthma.
Yeah, I like the touch of realism.
Yeah,
there.
exactly. The weakness, the Achilles heel. So the wedding was really nice. It was beautiful. I gave a speech. It was a good speech.
Yeah, did you crush?
I crushed. I really did.
You want to be the best.
I was
of
the
the
best.
speech givers.
I'll bleep this out, but I was the best. People told me that.
Yeah,
I got to bleep it out.
Don't you dare bleep it out.
I'll keep it in there. But also, you know what else I did? This I really have to admit, I thought it was going to be really corny. She had I guess in the I don't know, some Jewish thing. They didn't break the glass. She's half Jewish. She grew up in New York, and her mom is the most the Jewiest non-Jew. She's a therapist who lives on the Upper West Side. Her dad's Jewish.
Well, there's something in the water in New York that just makes everybody Jewish.
Exactly. Yeah, the horns start coming out.
There's calcium deposits from whatever is in the water, making those horns.
Yeah, exactly. Little nubs. So I had to. So they didn't break the glass. I like the breaking of the glass. You know what I'm talking about? At the end of a ceremony, you step on the glass.
Jews love breaking glass.
They do, yeah. Oh, no.
No.
Oh, Chris, no. You know what? Good for Jews. Can you believe we held on to that despite the night of broken glass? That's pretty resilient.
Do you think there were any survivors that have PTSD and they're like, we can't break any more glass?
That would be interesting. What if they adopted Catholic, got married in churches and protest? We're going to find out. We got to find that out. So they didn't do that. They didn't do the huppah, which is the house thing. You know, you've probably seen them. It's it's not a house. It's some kind of arch that you stand under.
Yeah.
And they didn't walk around it 7 times. There's something with 7 in Jewishness.
People love the number 7.
They do love great movie.
I love that movie.
Actually,
I took a date. I went on to that movie on a first date.
So how did it end?
I think everybody got real dry when the big fat guy when we saw his corpse with the SpaghettiOs coming out of his stomach.
I forgot about that part. Oh my god, it was so gross. That was a great movie though, right?
Yeah.
So you score?
Absolutely not.
How old were you? Middle school? We were in middle school then?
Well, we could say
okay,
a little bit older than
You're
middle school.
I was in grad school, getting my master's. So I did they had 7 values and they had 7 groups of people who had to present on it. And I was like, I love my friend Amelia, but this is so corny. And I thought it was going to be really corny. But it was great. And everyone else knew each other. So it was these 2 friends who lived with her in California, these guys who lived with Mark in D.C. And then it got to me, and I was assigned to this guy who I'd never met, nice guy, friends with Mark.
You were the dark horse from Manhattan.
Horse. Well, yeah, there were I think they were just Katie's outgoing, she's friendly, we have some people, 2 people don't know each other at all.
Yeah. Let's
put them together as opposed to, anyway. So the themes were connectedness, commitment, self-care. That shows you how much I love Amelia. I didn't leave the wedding despite the self-care theme. And our theme was joy and celebration. And I was like, oh, what should we do? So I decided we should do A Penny for Your Thoughts, the song from Red, White, and Blaine, the musical in Guffman. And people loved it. People loved it who hadn't even seen the movie. It was interesting that happens. Anyway, we're really excited. We're gonna call our guest in a couple minutes, but just want to give you a little heads up. We're gonna be talking to Sam Kriss.
Love Sam Kriss.
So great, right?
Yeah. Very
smart. Really great writer. I mean, we have lots of smart people on the show, and they're good writers, but he's a very poetic writer. He's a UK-based writer and essayist. That's why he's so good, because he's an essayist. And he lives in London. So he's going to be talking to us about the British elections.
I know him mostly from whale vomit.
Right.
Because I don't have time to read.
No.
It's all about podcasts. You got to listen to podcasts at 1.5 speed.
Yeah, I think Gabe may be the biggest fan of podcasts of anyone I know.
That's all I do.
Yeah.
I just run on the track listening to everything at 1.5 speed.
You run on the track?
I got to, yeah.
What? Since when?
8. I do 8 laps.
No.
That's it, and then I stretch.
Really?
And I got a foam roller. And
Where? Where do you do this?
I do this in Williamsburg.
At a gym?
No, it's outdoors.
Cool.
Next to McCarran Park.
Oh.
You guys know where to find me.
You're not going to disappear? My ex-boyfriend was in Spanish, it sounded less weird. He was like, yeah, if I do that, I'll disappear. Meaning he'll get too skinny if he does cycling or running.
No. Well, when I exercise, I gain weight. Muscle mass.
Oh, God, okay.
Yeah.
Got it, yeah. Even running.
I waste away when I just lay down on a hammock.
Oh, my God, I hate you.
Yeah.
Can we switch a little bit?
No, my diet's all milkshakes and cheeseburgers.
Do you know what I would give to do that? To live your life?
I know.
To live your best life?
Yeah.
I'm so jealous. So, yeah, he's going to be talking to us about the elections, and we're going to see just how much Jeremy Corbyn is, how much he is really a Bernie, and how much Theresa May is a Trump. Anything else we want to talk about?
I saw this video online yesterday while I was on the subway at 2 a.m. coming back from Broadway Comedy Club. And I saw this video of what had happened earlier that day. It was taken on a phone of these like fingers trying to get out of a subway car. So it was like a fully packed subway car, and the windows were covered on the inside with like condensation. So like it was like really wet, like a hothouse, like a greenhouse inside the subway car. And then the passage below said that these people had been stuck on a C train for an hour. And they were sweating to death. They were overheating on the subway.
Wow.
So did you hear about that story at all?
Yeah, but I think so what, people were on the subway for how long?
Their train was stuck for over an hour, and with no air conditioning and ventilation in there.
That sounds like that's a better date than 7.
Yes. Yeah.
Did anyone die or
no,
anyone have a heart attack?
People were like peeling off their clothes. I mean, there was a lady. One anecdote. She like took all her clothes off, not everything, but she got down to her bikini bottoms and whatnot. And other people kind of like made a little tent around her to cover,
so nice.
For modesty and whatnot. Right. But
she happened to be an observant Muslim.
Unfortunately, yes. This is, but this is just like another symptom of our public transportation system in New York City is it's the worst.
The worst. Well,
you go to any other city, major metropolis that's a world city, and the trains run on time and they're clean and efficient.
Madrid, Barcelona, London, but ours. I didn't know this. Ours is open all day, all night.
Yeah,
that I didn't realize was unique until I went to Madrid, where they're more of a night city than we are, and yet they're not 24/7. Then you take the bus, which is called the Owl. Okay, cool. I asked Josh Bregman, producer for the Katie Halper Show, who has lived in England. I asked him to write an intro to the political landscape in Great Britain, because we don't talk about England that much. So I wanted to provide you guys with some background. So here is Josh Bregman's introduction to current British politics. The UK will be holding a general election Thursday to determine whether the current Prime Minister, Theresa May, will stay in office or be unseated by her challenger from the Labour Party, Jeremy Corbyn. The election cycle began in mid-April, when May called a snap election in spite of having promised last year not to do so. At the time, she was 26 points ahead of Corbyn in the polls. May had hoped for an easy win that would give her a popular mandate and strengthen her hand going into the upcoming Brexit negotiations with the EU. The month that followed, however, has been an incredible reversal, as Corbyn has closed the massive gap and is now within 1 or 12 points of May, depending on the poll, confounding the expectations of most observers and commentators who had considered him, quote-unquote, unelectable, due to his left-wing policy proposals and unconventional persona. The polling and the electorate are incredibly volatile, and it's anyone's guess what will happen. It is also possible that May's party, the Conservatives or Tories, would not be able to achieve a majority in Parliament, which could also lead to her ouster. In the midst of the campaign, the UK has endured 2 terrorist attacks within the last 2 weeks, killing 30 people and having unexpected effects on the political situation. Here to discuss what might happen and what is at stake is Sam Kriss.
Hell yeah. We're going to talk to Sam Kriss?
Yeah, we're going to talk to Sam Kriss. Sam Kriss is a UK-based writer and essayist whose work has appeared in The Guardian, The New York Times, The Atlantic, Jacobin, Vice, and more. He currently has a podcast for The Baffler called Whale Vomit, and you can find his work at his site.
Hello?
Oh, hey, Sam.
Hey.
How's it going?
Sorry, did I interrupt you?
No. It's not. It's you. It's not you. It's me. We'll tack it on at the end. I'm here. This is Katie.
Hi. Nice to talk to you.
You too. I feel like I know you just from the onlines, and you're hearing your voice.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Okay, and this is Gabe Pacheco.
Hey, Sam Kriss. I'm Gabe Pacheco.
Hi.
God, Brits are so lucky. You guys just sound so... I'm sure you hear this all the time, but you guys sound so smart just saying the most mundane words.
Well, I mean, mostly I talk to other British people, so the effect doesn't really work.
Do we sound a little bit dumb to you?
No, not really. I mean, you should hear, how stupid some British people sound. The guy in the pub going, it's all nonsense, innit?
Innit?
There's no magic money tree.
Oh, I like that. And you push back and say there is a magic money tree?
Oh, it's been like one of the catchphrases of the election now, enforced by the Tory party. We can't have nice things because there's no magic money tree.
Oh, I didn't know that. You see, even your guys like corny, not very smart things sound more highbrow than ours.
Magic money tree sounds like a cereal I would eat. Like there's like a Keebler elf that lives in the magic money tree.
It's a beautiful image and it's cool because it does actually exist, but they're trying to pretend that it doesn't. No, it reminds me of like those kind of like those 1950s children's books that they used to make kids read, that like kind of whimsical themes and then a bit of covert racism.
Right. Right. Or overt, depending on. Right. Just a little flair. Not yeah. So we are really excited to talk to you about what you're working on, also the British elections, of course. And can you tell us a little bit about yourself? I did not know that you were from Jerusalem.
Yeah, I mean, the cat's out of the bag with that one, really. But when I took a trip back there to see family, a bunch of the alt-right suddenly started talking about how my entire family works for Mossad or whatever.
Finally, now you don't. Now the pressure's off.
It's not a connection that makes people very happy.
So I'm a Jew, so you can feel comfortable. We can bleep it. I'll bleep it out so that.
Like 8 years ago, I decided, I'll do a blog and then maybe I'll actually get writing. I just kind of kept on doing it until people gave me money and paid attention to me, which surprises me, frankly, but that's what happened.
Well, you're a very good writer. I was just saying that before, that you're, like, we have a lot of journalists on the show, but you're very good, just good prose.
Oh, thank you.
Sure. And I'm going to make sure to separate your saying that you are Jewish and that you got paid to write, because I don't want to perpetuate any. We don't need that. We gotta. By the way, so Gabe and I have an interesting thing where Gabe is. I've named Gabe an honorary Jew, but I'm not the only person, right? He. Wait. Also, as I'm saying this, he's literally putting on a black jacket with a hood, and there's something very sinister about him doing that as I'm revealing his partial Jewish identity.
I think it's more just I just have a very Jeff Goldblum like profile, and it didn't really help me much growing up in DC, and then I moved to New York, and people immediately assume things about me based on my profile.
Everyone in New York is Jewish, right?
That's what I tell. That's what I tell Katie every episode.
Everyone is.
Oh my God! Totally, actually. Yeah, that's very true. They actually, and Puerto Ricans actually, well, I'll tell you about this another time because I want to, this will be in the extra. We'll have you on again. I'll tell you my dating anecdotes. So Sam, tell us about what is going on in England. Tell us what's going on there. What are your thoughts on the election? You had 2 really great pieces on your blog. Did you say at your blog or on your blog?
I have no idea.
All right, we don't know.
With my blog?
Prepositions. With your blog, of your blog, by your blog, which is Idiot Joy Showland. It's samkriss.com, but the title of it is Idiot Joy Showland. And you have 2 great pieces. One is Corbinism or Barbarism, part 1, and then you have a part 2.
Yeah.
And you talk about how you going to vote for him, right? And but you don't always vote for Labour.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the first vote I ever cast in a general election was for Labour, and that was in 2010, when I was kind of young and impressionable and didn't really know what to do with myself. And this was, the election that they lost that brought in the Conservative Lib Dem coalition government. And, I just desperately didn't want the Tories to win. So I voted for Labour, and I didn't do it proudly.
So in this really great post, Corbinism or Barbarism, part 2, you say, I'm going to be voting for Labour. This is a new experience for me. It's not that I haven't voted Labour before. I did in 2010. Afterwards, I felt deeply ashamed. It was like having one of Gordon Brown's hair stuck in my mouth. We've all been there. It was as if his grease had started oozing through my skin. I felt suddenly complicit in everything. The wars, the privatizations, Britain. 5 years of Tory government acid couldn't burn off the guilt. I promised myself I wouldn't ever do it again. So can you tell us a bit about what happened?
The Labour governments under Tony Blair and Gordon Brown were just kind of so monstrously and irretrievably bad that, I couldn't shake the kind of horror of having sold myself out right in the first stage by voting Labour, and then they didn't even win at the end of it, And like kind of over time, like a lot of people, I kind of very much hardened in my stance towards the Labour Party. It became this kind of neoliberal party that, it wasn't really interested in actually reforming or improving anything, but just kind of triangulating these kind of monstrous right-wing positions towards their own ends. And even though the Conservative government that came after 2010, the Conservative coalition government, turned out to be in many ways immeasurably worse than the Labour government, I still had very little faith in the party. And I didn't vote for Labour in 2015. I'm not a Labour member, but during his leadership, I've had plenty of critiques of Corbynism and some of the limitations of the project and some of its aporias and the places it won't go and the kind of contradictions of parliamentary socialism. I think Jeremy Corbyn is the only thing that can save the Labour Party, because he's actually trying to turn it into something different than what it was. And what it was something that ever since the 1997 election, which is still held up as a kind of model of centre-left electoral success, it's been just hemorrhaging votes ever since then.
How well does the analogy between Sanders and Corbyn work?
It's kind of different in that. The first thing is that Corbyn actually managed to become the leader of his own party. It's always slightly different under a parliamentary system like we have. I can imagine that if Sanders had won the nomination, you probably would have seen something very similar to what we saw in the Labour Party with Corbyn. You would have, wasn't Bloomberg talking about running if Sanders got the nomination? Kind of cold-skinned, dead-eyed, keep the power where it belongs kind of candidacy against the shouty extremes of Trump and Sanders. But so obviously that situation is quite different. Also Jeremy Corbyn is a lot more left-wing than Sanders is. British political discourse is pitched terrifyingly to the right lately, but I don't think we're quite where you're at yet. Jeremy Corbyn is, for instance, a very principled anti-interventionist. He's when it comes to international politics, he's always had a very strong line on things like Palestine, for instance. He's always been in solidarity with Cuba. He's coming in with a lot of flack at the moment for. The line is that he was an IRA supporter during the Troubles in Northern Ireland. But, in fact, he was, trying to open dialogues with Sinn Féin, who are the kind of legitimate political, electoral Irish nationalist group in Northern Ireland. One area where Sanders actually kind of shows something of an improvement over Corbyn is that he's been much more willing to talk the language of class, whereas for all the great things that Corbyn's brought to the discourse, he's occasionally a bit wary of talking directly in terms of different interests. Although Labour's campaign slogan, "For the many, not the few," does actually kind of exemplify that. But for quite a while, Corbyn was a lot more willing to kind of push this kind of social collaborationism.
Is that because it's so explicit because it's the Labour Party and because England talks about class, and you have the Tories who are like, I just think of it as like, open aristocrats versus open proletariat.
Yeah, but
class.
Like the fucking hideous complexities of the British class system, it's an entirely different beast here. Like, you know, whenever two British people meet each other, the first thing they always do is spend like the first kind of 2 or 3 minutes of the conversation trying to work out exactly what the class position of the other person is, and then they'll know how to approach them.
Right.
Class is
I love it.
mutated into something, you know, really hideous in this country. It's kind of mutated beyond its actual economic determinations into this kind of complete system of being. Which, you know, I'm sure has something to do with the fact that we still actually have an aristocracy who, you know, ride around on horses with ridiculous names and have no chins and honk witlessly out of their chinless mouths.
Yeah, I know the chin thing is an issue. Bless their hearts. How do you tell the class thing? Is it the accent? Is it where they're from? Is it details? Is it?
Well, I mean, usually the biggest indicator is what supermarket you shop at, or, you know, like kind of what media you consume, where you get your clothes. You know, because British and in particular the English are enormously self-regarding people. There've been a lot of books written just on the subject of, you know, the British class system and how it works and what people in it are like. Like Kate Fox's Watching the English is one that I have read. But you know, we have we also have a lot of the kind of right-wing politics of authenticity, which kind of try to deploy class against the left here. You know, you've had the Conservatives recently have been talking in this kind of, you know, what you could call a kind of old-fashioned class rhetoric that, you know, the Labour Party could never do because they'd be accused of being, you know, outright Bolsheviks. But they've been talking about, you know, about how the Conservatives are the real party of the workers against a kind of multicultural elitists and the metropolitan liberals and so on.
Globalists.
And then during the last Labour leadership contest, which was last year, I mean, time's just kind of run away from me lately. But, you know, you had Owen Smith, who was the right wing of the Labour Party's challenger, who would make these incredibly strange pronouncements about, you know, there was a Observer interview with him in which he went to a cafe and got a cappuccino and then had to pretend that he didn't know what a cappuccino was and called it a frothy coffee because, really, you know, funny. Being able to pronounce such a suspiciously foreign word would probably mark him out as some kind of effete urban liberal. And even recently, I don't want to slander anyone, and I can't remember exactly who it was, but there was a Labour MP who was on Twitter talking about Jeremy Corbyn supporter claiming to be in support of the working class and then walking into a Costa coffee. And I don't know if you have it in the States actually, but like Costa is a like normal, you know, chain of coffee stores like
it's
Starbucks
red with white writing on it.
And the implication is, you know, real, authentic, working class British people don't drink coffee. They drink, you know, a nice mug of beef broth and piss warmed over a wood-fired stove. And it's kind of ridiculous, and it's not working because, you know, Jeremy Corbyn's support is actually higher, within the Labour Party at least, is higher among working class Labour members. And that's because, you know, I think eventually people will they'll see the difference between this kind of bizarre pantomime routine of class politics and a politics which might actually benefit the working class.
How surprised were you by how relatively well he's doing, and what do you think is going to happen?
I mean, that's a big question. I mean, like when the election was called, there was every expectation there'll be an absolute rout for the Conservatives. You know, it was called on the understanding that the only thing that would happen is that the Tories would gain like 200 seats and Labour would be destroyed as a party and we'd enter into this kind of glorious period of one-party rule under the leering face of Theresa May. And that's not happened. I mean, it's been like basically since the Labour manifesto was launched, he's suddenly started skyrocketing in the polls. I mean, it's hard to say exactly what will happen because, a lot of people on the left like to pay attention to a few of the polls, especially those from YouGov and Ipsos Mori, which show Corbyn between 5 and I think the latest is 1 point behind the Conservatives. But then there are others which show the Tories with a 10 or 12 or 15 point lead. I'm not surprised that he's done this well, actually, to be honest, because at the beginning of the first Labour leadership contest in 2015, he started as a 200 to 1 outsider. Every leadership contest, the left of the party bands together, and it's one of their turn to go and stand for the leadership and inevitably fail, and then some kind of glossy monstrosity takes over the party instead. But this time, as soon as they started putting him in a room together with the other candidates and having them actually talk and debate and answer people's questions, people started liking what Corbyn was saying because, unlike a lot of politicians, he doesn't talk like an automated chatbot. He's actually capable of holding a conversation, and he thinks before he talks rather than just reeling off whatever answer he had prepared. And when you're in a kind of election scenario, you can't have there's been a few instances of the party kind of backbiting at him, but there's not been so much of that. And he's done extraordinarily well, and you just kind of have to hold your head in your hands and go, why didn't you just do this from the beginning? We wouldn't have to be in this situation.
And can you tell us about the attack that happened over the weekend and what effect that will or will not have on the election?
The attack in London
so far.
I mean, the attack in obviously both attacks, this one and the one in Manchester were, absolutely horrifying, and this really monstrous kind of vicious rage against people who are just trying to have fun with their friends and families on a night out. The attack on Manchester was it was incredibly devastating for a lot of people. Campaigning was suspended for several days. There were soldiers on the streets in London and I think in other places around the country. And like a big part of that was the fact that it was children who were being targeted, and that was like an incredible wound in the city and the country, and people have rallied together really admirably. And I don't mean at all to diminish the horror of what happened in London, but I mean because London is this kind of vast and indifferent metropolis. People here have a kind of people here are kind of very resilient to that kind of thing. We've been targeted by terrorists many times before in our even quite recent history, and there's something about the kind of the anonymity of this city almost. So I don't actually foresee it having a really major effect. I mean, in the immediate aftermath of Manchester, I was worried that this would be, grist to the mill of the Conservative security state machinery. But I think it isn't, actually. I think what's really happening with these attacks is that we've had 3 fatal terrorist attacks in 3 months, and people are getting absolutely sick of it, and they want something to change. And Jeremy Corbyn, in the aftermath of the Manchester attack, he was talking about how if we're very serious about preventing this kind of thing from happening, we need to reconsider the effects of our foreign policy. It's not the case that these attacks are entirely reducible to British actions overseas. After all, the attacker in Manchester, I think 2 of the 3 attackers in London, although I may not be correct on that one, were kind of British born and bred. And some of the problems, I think, absolutely have to do with what's going on inside British society. But he was very clear that he was very clear that part of what got us here were things like, you know, the Iraq War or the 2011 attack on Libya, or what's currently happening in Syria and in Iraq, and obviously the right-wing media went into overdrive at this and accused him of blaming Britain for the attacks and so on. But as a smear, it's entirely failed to land. I think a poll showed that 56% of people in this country actually agree with him. You know, most people here were against the war in Iraq, were against the intervention in Libya, and are against any possible intervention in Syria. So Corbyn has a history of actually giving the correct answers to problems, and it is possible that it is possible that the kind of very nasty conservative attempts to capitalize on these attacks by redoubling their rhetoric against migration and multiculturalism will fail. I mean, after all, as people have been pointing out, Prime Minister Theresa May was Home Secretary for 6 years before she was Prime Minister. This was all under her jurisdiction. And, you know, it was obviously under her watch that police numbers were cut, and that a whole bunch of measures that, you know, very seriously alienated a lot of people from minority ethnic backgrounds in this country were introduced. You know, she sent vans with racist slogans from the 1970s around the north of London, telling migrants to go home.
Oh wow, vintage. That's quaint.
This kind of rhetoric and attitude is genuinely sickening, and a lot of people are very sickened by it. I think people should be very wary of, like, you know, making political hay from tragedies.
Yes,
I don't think it's
happens,
going
right?
to benefit Labour, but
Okay.
you know, the fact that this kind of thing is happening, you know, it does kind of underline the fact that the way we're doing things now just doesn't work.
You think people are making the connection between Theresa May's previous job and what's happening now? Because I feel like in the United States, people have such short memories that they don't ever make the connection between, like, the policy and then what's happening now.
Oh God, people here have incredibly short memories. You know, I think it's a function of just, like, political culture in general. You know, there's a political sketch writer who, like, years ago, a year ago, just after the Brexit referendum, Jeremy Corbyn made a joke in Parliament at David Cameron's expense, and was roundly derided for it. And then a few weeks later, Theresa May made the same joke at Jeremy Corbyn, and everyone was congratulating her on what a stunning barb it was. I mean, you know, like, kind of lobby journalists and political reporters, my friends accepted, are basically idiots wherever you go. You know, one of the parties in the election is doing everything it can to make Theresa May's record an issue in the election. You know, like the thing with Theresa May is that when, you know, even like 1 year into her premiership, most people didn't really know who she was. You know, like, there was never really a full leadership election in the Conservatives, because one of the candidates kind of suddenly bowed out, and it was just a virtual coronation for Theresa May. It all kind of took place behind the scenes, and the British public were presented with this Prime Minister without really being told who she was or what she would do or what she was like. And the line that came out of the media was that, you know, she was this kind of firm hand on the wheel, sensible, pragmatic, good negotiator, strong and stable, etc., etc., which is all an absolute lie. Like, can I swear on this thing? It was total bullshit. She, you know, she's devastating. She's one of those people who's devastatingly incompetent, but because they're also kind of very petty and cruel, people think that they're good at the game of politics, and she's simply not. You know, like, when she was Home Secretary, as well as the racist vans that she sent around London, for instance, she deported, I think, 44,000 students because they took a conversational English test, which may have been fraudulent. You know, she has a legacy of just kind of terrible and ideologically
driven decisions. But that's not really the Theresa May that anyone really knew. Even as, with the Brexit negotiations, before they even started, she was immediately saying, we can't have single market access, we can't stay in the European Economic Area, we can't basically have any of the things that might soften the blow of Brexit. And she was kind of ruling out what should have been, British bargaining goals before the negotiations had even started. And it's only really in the election, in the process of the election, that people have actually been introduced to Theresa May, because, most people don't pay obsessive attention to the news because they're normal and they have better things going on in their lives, unlike me.
Or me, yeah.
So, I'm sure a lot of the country wouldn't have really seen very many interviews with her, for instance, before the election, because she doesn't really do interviews. And the ones that she's done since have been an absolute disaster. She's shown herself to be mostly capable of trotting out sound bites and repeating nonsensical phrases that a team of political strategists have come up with for her. Jeremy Corbyn absolutely deserves a lot of the credit for his success in the polls lately. But in a way, the real story has just been the absolute shambles that the Conservative campaign has been, because they're trying to sell something, but they're fundamentally lying about what it is that they're selling, and people are starting to take notice of that.
I feel like we're having a dumb off to see who's dumber, like Americans or British people. And I think you're underestimating us. I guess they are, yeah. Well, I want to know, does Theresa May not eat ethnic food? Because I feel like if you're going to be a racist, you should be stuck with fish and chips and blood sausage. What else do you guys have there that's indigenous to England?
Mud, bog water, pustules, pig's trosses, jelly eels.
That's just desserts.
If it looks like something that has been thrown away after a European did, the butchery, then we'll probably eat it.
Right. You're a hardy people.
It's just kind of weird. There's this kind of weird kind of racism we have here, where people kind of go, "Oh, I can't be a racist. I love curry." Although exactly. I guess that's kind of similar to Trump kind of posing majestically with a taco bowl from his own restaurant.
It's at least more. It's slightly more tasteful than the I've slept with X women. I can't be racist because I've had sex with XYZ ethnicity.
Yeah, no. I think I've actually had an ex rebuff accusations of anti-Semitism that way.
That's good. That's an honor.
Yeah, no. I'm actually all in favor of it, frankly. I'm just doing my bit for a less anti-Semitic planet.
Exactly. Yeah, for humanity. Yeah. And what about the mayor of London? Are you a fan?
Sadiq Khan.
Yeah.
When Donald Trump took it upon himself to start castigating him after the attacks in London, it was very hard to not feel instinctive sympathy towards the man. And when he was running for the mayor of London, the Evening Standard, which is the kind of London-only free newspaper, mounted a just incredibly racist campaign against him, alleging him of all of these kind of various extremist links. And Sadiq Khan may as well be the squeakiest clean Muslim in Britain. He's this kind of shiny, glossy, charismatic, kind of not too left-wing, son of a bus driver. He's perfect. And if he can't escape racist scapegoating, then probably no one can. So I have a lot of instinctive sympathy for the guy. Politically, he's kind of a big meh. He's after, for instance, Corbin campaigned very hard for him in the mayoral election. He returned the favor by, being just another snake in the grass in his premiership. He's very clean. He's very keen to, talk about how much he loves Israel, for instance. Whereas, Ken Livingstone, the first mayor of London, he was making arrangements with the Hugo Chavez government in Venezuela to provide free bus travel for elderly citizens.
Nice. Which is ironic because Sadiq should have been doing that because his dad was a bus driver, right?
Well, I mean, like to be fair, Sadiq Khan's best policy is about buses, where if you take 2 buses in 2 hours, you only pay the fare for one, which is like for a lot of people who have to budget and work out exactly how much money they have at the end of any given week, and if they take the bus to work, that's going to save them a lot of money. So for that alone, I'm behind him. Also, he cancelled that fucking bridge that they wanted to build over London, which cost like £7 million before they even started building it, and it was all because I think Esther Ranson had a nice dream about it.
I agree. And it looks like Theresa May is actually paying a price for her closeness with Donald Trump.
Yeah. Yeah, she's been an absolute embarrassment when it comes to Trump. I mean, I don't know how much play it got over in America. I mean, actually, I was in the States right at the beginning of Theresa May's visit. But there was a picture of her holding hands with him as they walked down the steps, which either one or both of them tried to explain by saying that Donald Trump was afraid of the stairs, so Theresa May took his hand to reassure him, which to be honest, I don't even want to think about that. But yeah, more recently, after kind of blithely insulting our mayor on Twitter, Donald Trump wants to come to the UK for a state visit to, lend us solidarity and support in the wake of terrorism, which I think there's nothing more likely to get people in London rioting. And quite recently, a number of European heads of state wrote a letter on Donald Trump's withdrawal from the Paris Climate Treaty, and Theresa May refused to sign. And she tried to account for that in a question time debate by talking about how close her relationship was with Trump, and how rather than having to sign a letter, she could just kind of say personally, "Oh, I really wish you wouldn't do that." But, a lot of people clearly weren't buying it. I mean, I think the current approval ratings for Donald Trump here are something around 11%. We'll very happily lap up the British Donald Trump, but because the American one is very much played for an American audience, he's not particularly popular. In a way, it's almost kind of worse than than Blair with George W. Bush, because at the very least the Democrats and everyone else in America were also busy bending over backwards to prostrate themselves before the idiot king of America. Whereas this time, there's actually been a lot of pushback, a lot of it, coming from fairly unpleasant courses like David Frum or whatever. But when you have most major European leaders clearly signaling their displeasure with everything the big special boy of America does, Theresa May's kind of instant compliance, out of kind of post-Brexit desperation, kind of looks very pathetic, and it definitely undercuts her, strong and stable Britain as a global leader kind of rhetoric.
And why do you think Obama endorsed Macron in France? Why do you think he hasn't endorsed anyone in England?
Because he's a liberal, isn't he? Because Macron espoused Obama's politics and Jeremy Corbyn absolutely doesn't. If we had Yvette Cooper, although I mean, actually, to be fair, given that Theresa May is the incumbent, I think it's unlikely that Obama would endorse anyone. Although when he came to the UK shortly before the Brexit vote and begged the British people to vote to remain, that may have been a significant factor pushing people to vote leave, because there's this kind of willful spark of, I don't know, counter-colonial cringe, which makes British people kind of want to do the exact opposite of whatever some highfalutin American comes in and tells them to. It's kind of like, I don't know if you remember in 2004, the Guardian newspaper here ran this letter writing campaign where a bunch of Guardian readers would write to voters in a swing county in rural Iowa, I think.
I don't know this.
You know, almost uniformly told them to vote for John Kerry, and they got a lot of hate mail back. You know, people don't like being told what to do by foreigners.
Right.
And you know, I genuinely can't see Obama having really anything in common with someone like Corbin. You know, I mean, for a start, Corbin was principally, you know, he was in principled opposition to every single one of the wars that Obama started.
I guess I was. I mean, I'm not surprised, but it is. Theresa May is pretty scary. I kind of thought maybe.
Yeah, she's fucking terrifying, but she's kind of, you know, despite Brexit, she's kind of terrifying in a way that's pretty homogenous with the existing world order. You know, like here's your country, you're in charge of it. Time to do some racism. Whereas you know, a Jeremy Corbyn victory would seriously upset the world order, because you know, for the first time in a while, you'd have a you know, a fairly major global economic power, which is trying to seriously buck the trend of neoliberalism. You know, I think, you know, to be honest, I think in that sense, Obama probably has more in common with Marine Le Pen than he does with Jeremy Corbyn.
Ooh, wow. That's good. I'm going to make that into
I mean, you know, I should clarify that, you know, Marine Le Pen makes a lot of anti-neoliberal gestures, but
right, of course, right.
You know, it's kind of like her politics are economic populism on the same kind of level as Donald Trump, which, you know, essentially continues to allow the same slow creeping devastation that's been destroying everything to keep on doing what it's doing.
And what about the Blairites? What are they doing to sandbag Corbyn?
Well, I mean, there was a rumor that came out today. I'm not sure if it can be trusted, that the Blairite wing of the party are planning to mount a leadership challenge at 10:01 p.m. on Thursday, which would be, I think, shortly after the exit poll comes out. I mean, like, in this election period, they have been mostly quite quiet. Although there are stories of, you know, MPs knocking on doors in their constituencies and then proceeding to, you know, rant at voters about how Jeremy Corbyn's an anti-Semite, and there's been some campaign literature which has been sent out by kind of local Labour parties to voters, basically saying, we hate Jeremy Corbyn, but it's okay. He won't win. He won't win, so you can vote for us, and it's perfectly safe to do so. And you have had a few big Labour figures kind of briefing against the current leadership. Like, it's been more muted in the last 6 weeks simply because you know, if these people actually visibly throw the election in favour of the Tories, then, well, I mean, for a start, they might not get to keep their jobs. But you know, well, I mean, actually, to be honest, whatever happens on Thursday, we're very likely to see a immense amount of discontent within the Labour Party. I mean, there was talk at the beginning of the election, before Corbyn's polls started skyrocketing, of the MPs that are left in the party, the anti-Corbyn ones, rather than trying to overthrow Corbyn, they would resign from the Labour Party, form a new bloc in Parliament calling itself, I think the working name was the Progressives, and then wait until the Labour Party got rid of Corbyn by itself, at which point they would rejoin, which is a absolutely stupid idea. But these are, for the most part, absolutely stupid people. I mean, the Blairite era did not produce a lot of intellectual luminaries. Like most of the Labour Party who came up during that period are kind of intensely stupid people who think that you know, bright colours and a nice tie are a substitute for actual political work and political thought.
You'll be able to hear the rest of our interview with Sam Kriss if you just go to patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show.